Hello everybody, welcome to Totally Tabled. My name is Shaggy, and today I'm running down my top 10 most anticipated solo board games for 2025. I've already made playthroughs for Iridia, The Paths We Dare Tread, and Unstoppable, so those will obviously not be a part of this list. Elder Scrolls and Star Trek Captain's Chair won't be on this list either because I've already received those games and I may or may not have already played them. I'm also not going to list games that I've anticipated in past years. So, no Galactic Cruise, The Old King's Crown, Quayside, Perseverance, or Stone Saga. That about covers it, so let's stop wasting time and let's jump right into the list. Number 10 is Eternal Decks. This is a cooperative puzzle card game that, according to BGG, is best solo. Apparently it works by having objectives that you need to satisfy before you find yourself in a position where you can no longer take an action. Actions seem to be mostly around acquiring and playing cards, so there's a little bit of a deck building element, it seems. And then you're playing cards out into different areas with different restrictions. So like, for example, you may not be able to play adjacent similar colors or numbers in the same rows, things like that. You'll also be acquiring cards that give you one-time special abilities that you can use to alter the board as well. This really reminds me of like a simple, puzzly card game from Button Shy, except this one will obviously have more cards and a little bit more going on. And I just love games like that. I love simple puzzly games that don't take very long, and this seems like it'll be right up my alley. I also love the colorful and evocative artwork that really feels like it might be based on something historical, like some sort of mythological imagery or icons. It just has such a striking table presence. I'm definitely intrigued. That's my number 10, Eternal Decks. Number 9 is Rise of Babel. Rise of Babel looks like one of those beige, themeless, old-school medium-weight Euros that I like so much. I had to have at least one of these on the list. Currently, BGG has this one as either best solo or at 3 players, which is kind of weird. I really don't know much about the gameplay, but the description from the publisher makes it sound like you're doing some deck building. You know, you're acquiring cards through an open draft. And in some way, these cards are multi-use. I'm not sure how. I love games with multi-use cards, so I hope they're done in a clever way. And then it looks like you're doing some sort of tile placement with resources that you're generating, apparently off your player boards. I really like the looks of these player boards. It looks like there's some interesting things going on. I'm not sure with the tile placement if you're trying to create certain patterns or, you know, there's certain resources you need to put in certain places. Not sure if there's an area control thing going on. I will say I really like the overall look of the game. The art is done by Andrew Bosley, who does great work. And so everything looks really nice. And nothing looks very complex. It all looks very streamlined and, like I said, medium weight. This is definitely one I'm excited to check out. That's my number 9, Rise of Babel. Number 8 is Wandering Galaxy, a Crossroads game. You had me at Crossroads. I absolutely adore this series. According to the description, in this one, we'll be members of a ragtag starship crew traversing the edge of charted space in search of fame and riches. I love that theme, and I love the colorful approach that they're taking here. This is clearly going to be a fun sci-fi romp that doesn't take itself too seriously. That is exactly what I want. Now, if you're not familiar with these Crossroads games, it's a series of games from Plaid Hat Games. It started with Dead of Winter, I believe. And essentially, it's just a system where you have events that can come up. Things can happen depending on the actions that you take. And this one really looks like it's following in the path of the last one of these games that I've played, which is Forgotten Waters. And it was really fun. It had the same flip book sort of system that's clearly going on here. And it had a wonderful app integration where some amazing voice acting making it very easy to, go through and make the decisions and go through the flow of the game, really streamlining that whole process and delivering some fun adventures. This looks to be exactly the same thing. Now, the only reason I have this a little bit lower is because I suspect that it might be, good solo, but better with more players. That's certainly how Forgotten Waters was. But honestly, I don't care. I'd be happy to play it solo. The app really helps with that. That's my number 8, Wandering Galaxy, a Crossroads game. My number 7 is Deep Regrets. Talk about not taking yourself too seriously. This looks like a really silly, quote-unquote, horror game where you will be fishing for more and more horrific things from the ocean. You're going to have to decide which of these monstrosities you're going to eat or sell, or I guess mount on your wall. And those decisions will have profound consequences as the game goes along. Now, obviously, the biggest draw for this game is just the incredible artwork, which is done by the designer. The whole look of everything is so gorgeous and off-putting and strange. It's glorious. And I don't know much about the gameplay, but it looks like it revolves around some kind of push your luck dice rolling and set collection. Looks simple and quick. Says about 30 minutes per player, so a solo game will run really quick. And usually that sort of thing doesn't quite work, but once again, BGG has this one as best at either 1 or 3. So I have high hopes that this will work well as a solo game. So there you go. Deep Regrets, my number 7. Number 6 is The Lord of the Rings, Fate of the Fellowship. Now, you may not realize it right away, but this is a pandemic system game. This is in their pandemic line. It uses some of the same pandemic mechanisms. Now, there have been many of these types of games at this point, and I've played very few of them. Outside of, the base Pandemic and the expansions, Pandemic Iberia, and then, of course, the Pandemic Legacy games. Outside of those, I haven't played many. I think there was a Star Wars one. I think there was a Warhammer one. I haven't played those. What has me interested is the publisher says that this is the most mechanically rich pandemic system designed to date. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but I am interested in that. If I'm going to play another pandemic game, I want it to be, vastly different and maybe even a little heavier than, say, Pandemic Iberia. The other thing I found interesting is that, well, for one, each player controls 2 characters. So that's kind of interesting. And then it says that each play presents new challenges every time with 24 different objectives, 14 events, and 13 playable characters. So the idea of having objectives that you have to meet, specifically for that game, and every game you have a different set of objectives, that sounds pretty interesting. This game also has dice, custom dice with different faces, and a cardboard dice tower that has the Eye of Sauron on it or something. And the last thing that really intrigued me about this was on the back of the box, it says, never miss an opportunity to get it to the table with the included solo mode designed by Matt Leacock himself. So one, just including that on the back of the box is interesting, but to have a special solo mode, curious to see how the solo mode changes things. There you go. That's my number 6, Lord of the Rings, Fate of the Fellowship. Number 5 is Natera, New Beginning. This game just looks super cute. I love the art style, and I love this theme of sentient animals exploring a post-humanity world, taking over areas and things like that. It looks really adorable. All these little animal meeples and things. I really like how bright and colorful it all looks. But the description of this game really caught my eye because it's just describing all of these things that I love. So first of all, I love exploration. So it looks like you're going to be going out. You can see on the board, there's this little central area, maybe the safe space. And then you go out and explore these different tiles, gives you different abilities. I like this kind of worker placement where you're doing worker movement. and like uncovering new worker placement spots. I've always loved that. And here it looks like we're doing worker placement with workers that have different abilities. And that's just fantastic. There's not enough games like that. There's also drafting in this game. There is a tech tree, which I love. And this sentence here really, really caught my eye. This is a description from the designer. It says that the game includes 150 plus basic and advanced exploration cards featuring discoveries, improvements, science, and 40 unique specialist cards, allowing each animal tribe to navigate and explore different strategies every single game. That really sounds like you're going to be able to develop a very unique tribe with really unique special abilities, and that there'll be a lot of replayability between games where you can try different avenues or paths to victory. It's one of my favorite things in a game like Great Western Trail, and if this can do a similar thing with that exploration, love it. I really have high hopes for this one. That's my number 5, Natera New Beginning. Number 4 is First Monday in October. This is a historical political game about the US Supreme Court. But instead of playing like a justice or something, instead you're going to be playing as like a school of thought that is attempting to influence the high court. And the game attempts to recreate the history of the US Supreme Court from 1789 up until present day. That just sounds fascinating to me. I've never played a game that has any sort of theme like this. The US Supreme Court is a fascinating subject, and I'm a big fan of the sort of the history that this publisher, Fort Circle Games, has put into their other games. In fact, I've played Votes for Women on the channel. You can go check my full solo playthrough of that. Their productions are fantastic, and they really include a lot of history. But the sentence that I read here in the description that really gets me excited is this one. It says, players need to use their limited influence and actions wisely to manipulate the judicial philosophy of the court and to prevail in as many cases as possible. I really love games where you have limited power and you're having to try to utilize that just right to influence the situation to your benefit. That's why one of my favorite games of all time is PAX Premier 2nd Edition, because that's what that game is all about. Now, exactly how are we doing that in this game from like a gameplay perspective? I'm not sure. There looks like there's a lot of tracks. There's obviously some kind of card play and things. Don't really know, but I am fascinated with this subject, and I'm a big fan of this publisher. So this one's a no-brainer for me. That's First Monday in October. My number 3 is Rove. Rove is a cooperative fantasy campaign adventure game. Seems like I have to have at least one of these on every anticipated list as well. I love these kinds of games. I mean, really, this looks like Gloomhaven. This looks like a bunch of designers who really like Gloomhaven have sort of made their own Gloomhaven with dice, and I'm fine with that. I love Gloomhaven. This world looks a little bit more colorful, I suppose, but we're going to have the same turn-based combat using skill cards of some variety. But what really got me interested in this one is, this sentence from the description on BGG. It says, players will adventure through a branching story filled with consequence, where choices affect both individual adventures and the state of the world. But beware, the paths left behind don't fade away. They linger and fester until what was once the promise of a threat evolves into something else entirely. The idea of making choices that have severe consequences for your adventure and change the world. The idea that I have to pick paths and the ones that I leave behind can change into something else. That's the sort of storytelling that I'm hoping can be achieved in one of these games. Real consequences that you feel throughout the entire adventure. So far, I like the looks of this. I like this high fantasy world that they've created. It looks very interesting. Doesn't look super generic. So again, high hopes for Rove, my number 3. Number 2 is The Sixth Realm. So far on the list, I've had, some lighter and medium weight sort of games. This is the first proper heavy Euro. This is coming from a trio of established designers that I trust, and it's got the artwork of the Micho. He's one of my favorite artists. In fact, you can go check out my top 10 board game artists video to see where he falls there. But I just love how bright and cheery and colorful this game is. It doesn't have that dark and depressing look that so many games have nowadays. I'm so over that. But just from a component standpoint, I'm all in. We have all these custom meeples. We've got the dual layer boards with all the meeples sort of fitting into the spots. You take them out, moving up tracks. It's got all the eye candy that, horrifies some people, but really gets me excited. And looking at the board here, it appears to me anyway, and sort of reading a quick little description, that there's almost like a bunch of different mini games going on. There's these different like guilds that are represented on the board. Each round, you're going to go through and sort of activate each one of these guilds. And each one's going to sort of play out like its own little mini game. I like that idea. It's giving me some memories of like Trajan, for instance, or something like that. I think that sounds like a lot of fun. And then in the description, they talk about combos, bonuses, engine building, and interaction. So I'm getting the sense that there's some sort of, comboing and chaining of actions. Just some good classic heavy Euro stuff here. So there you go. That's my number 2, The Sixth Realm. And my number 1 is Speakeasy. I'm nothing if not predictable, but I also have to be honest. I'm a giant Lacerda fan, along with Ian O'Toole, who is, again, teaming up to do the artwork. So, of course, their next game is what I'm most excited to play in 2025. Last year, my number 1 anticipated game was Lacerda's Inventions, Evolution of Ideas, and I absolutely adore that game. It's actually my favorite of all of his games for solo play. It's no secret that his designs aren't typically best for solo, but many are certainly great. And I'm hopeful that Speakeasy will have a similarly well-designed solo mode, just like Inventions did. I think what I'm most excited about for Speakeasy is the theme. You play as a mobster in Prohibition-era Manhattan, and you'll be managing your own speakeasy empire. As it says in the description, you'll be hiring goons, delivering liquor to earn income, and then upgrading your speakeasies, even creating casinos. And during all of this, you'll need to be careful not to attract the attention of outside mafia and the police. This is a wonderfully cinematic setting, and one of Lacerda's strengths is being able to create highly thematic games with complex and intriguing mechanisms. If he can pull that off here, then this has a chance to be a very special game. Keep an eye out on this channel, because as soon as I get this one in, I'm dropping everything, just like I have for his last 2 games. So there you go, that's my number 1 most anticipated solo game for 2025, Speakeasy. What games are you anticipating this year? Please list them in the description below. And let me know if you've had a chance to play any of these games. Until next time, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.